Now, The Vampire Next Door is a movie that details an introverted and awkward young man who is in a love quad with 3 girls, and 2 of them are vampires. I mean, anything that can go wrong will go wrong in this romantic horror comedy. And here are 5 reasons you should watch The Vampire Next Door. Coming up on SYNOPSIS Horror. Now, The Vampire Next Door is a 2024 horror romantic comedy that tells the story of Cameron, a 20-year-old with no drive or motivation, but is madly in love with this girl on the street named Diane. And while Diane has feelings for him as well, for whatever reasons, they've never become a thing. But this situation gets muddied when one night Cameron is watching his next door neighbor undress. But she catches him and makes a deal with him to be her personal driver so she won't tell his parents that he's a pervert who enjoys watching his neighbor undress. But this journey unlocks the impossible that involves 3 women, Cameron, a jock, and a vampire war. Oh yeah, there's a lot going on. But why should you watch this movie? Reason number 1, a love quad. Now, The Vampire Next Door consists of a love quad. There's Cameron, who's a slacker and a loser according to everyday people who knows him. I mean, there's really nothing appealing about him, but he somehow got the affection of 2 gorgeous female vampires, with one being his next door neighbor, and his pretty coworker, Liz. And somehow, Cameron manages to screw up every single possible relationship with every woman in his life. And yet, this movie finds time to be entertaining, funny, and include a good amount of gore. Reason number 2, a vampire war. In 2024's The Vampire Next Door, Cameron, to appease the anger of his smoking hot next door neighbor Victoria for watching her change clothes, he agrees to be her personal driver to keep her from telling his parents about what he did. Now, while driving her, he lands himself in the center of a 200-year-old vampire war, where Victoria is hunting rival vampires who killed her ex-husband. But because of this newfound information, Cameron feels that he's helping her right or wrong and feels a sense of responsibility to ensure things go well for her. And amidst this partnership, both develop feelings for one another. Reason number 3, a jock. Now, in 2024's The Vampire Next Door, Cameron is in love with this girl named Diane, who's like the love of his life. And though they've never been an item due to Diane going in and out of relationships with other guys, she feels the same way about Cameron. But in comes a jock who Cameron once tutored named Martin. Now, Martin is a complete buffoon. I mean, he was once asked to take Diane to the senior prom, but he stood her up. But not because he was a jerk, but because he freezes up and loses all function at the sight of her beauty. And though Diane is turned off by Martin's intellect and caveman ways, she's physically attracted to him. And this causes a problem for Cameron, as this complicates their already complicated relationship. Reason number 4, Cameron is an idiot. I mean, in 2024's The Vampire Next Door, Diane is Cameron's longtime crush, and though she feels the same way about him, there's always another guy in the picture. But Martin, who Diane is physically attracted to only and is not attracted to in any other way, manages to get Cameron to agree to hook him up with Diane. And Cameron agrees. Yes, Cameron tries to hook up a random dude he hardly knows with the girl of Cameron's dreams. He even goes as far as feeding him lines by making this jock wear AirPods during the entirety of their date. And yes, Cameron knows this jock only wants one thing from Diane, and yet he's dumb enough to agree to this, making their complicated relationship, once again, even more complicated. Reason number 5, it took me back to the 80s. Now, 2024's The Vampire Next Door took me back to the 80s. The vibe of this movie consists of blood, vampires, and a complicated love quad, and a ton of hijinks. I mean, this sort of movie was very present in the 80s and had this chatty, free-flowing feel, you never know what's going to happen sort of vibe to it. And though this movie took me back to the golden era of cinema, the characters in this movie presented a movie that made you wonder, how would it end? Now, in the end, 2024's The Vampire Next Door gave me a Fright Night sort of feel. Well, sort of. Think of it like this. You take Fright Night, which is the equivalent of like the hottest girl you've ever seen, And then in this movie, The Vampire Next Door, it's like her less attractive cousin. Yes, she has like her looks and has some of the same features, but for whatever reason, she doesn't quite possess the same package as the hot girl, if that makes sense. Now, while The Vampire Next Door isn't on Fright Night's level, this is still a fun time, just not what it could have been. Now, a movie like Fright Night got better, and by the end, you arrive at its crescendo. But The Vampire Next Door doesn't have that crescendo, but still worth a good watch. I mean, because the formula is good enough to enjoy. And I will admit, this movie isn't for everyone, but amongst the comedic love story is a decent amount of kills. So yeah, there's blood. And there's enough of the will they or won't they between Cameron and all three girls. And until next time, when SYNOPSIS talks horror.